We'll get started. So, welcome everyone. Today's webinar is hosted by DBHR through the Washington State Healthcare Authority. And really, we want this to be an interactive session. So, please use the chat, unmute your mics, raise your hand, and as we kind of go along and talk about some of the content. So, just a couple of little housekeeping notes. We do want to make sure that we are noting that the use of automated note-taking bots or similar tools during the Washington FCS events or meetings or trainings requires prior approval, and any unauthorized use of such tools is prohibited to ensure the privacy and confidentiality of all attendees. And also, any recording that is created through AI is not recognized as an official recording of this session, and we do reserve the right to exit trainees from the training if they are using AI to take notes without prior approval or using AI to record the session. So the session is being recorded and will be sent out. Well, it's not going to be sent out. The recordings are no longer emailed to participants. What will happen is the recording of today's session will be available on the link provided here, the HCA FCS channel, which is the Foundational Community Supports YouTube, about 2 weeks after the session. And I just popped in the chat a little earlier today's materials. I'll do that again about halfway through the session today to make sure that people who are joining a little bit later have those materials as well. So why don't we get started? So today's session is introducing yourself and your employment services to potential employers. My name is Joni Dolce. I'm with the Department of Psychiatric Rehabilitation and Counseling Professions in the Integrated Employment Institute. We're an employment institute within the department where our mission is to provide trainings, technical assistance, consultation to improve employment and education outcomes for individuals with mental health conditions. Today's topic, introducing yourself to employment, to potential employers, really is about that somewhat difficult task that many employment services may maybe employment specialists may feel is kind of out of their realm of what they went to school for. Many people went to school for counseling or other mental health related or behavioral health services, and sort of in this job development persona or job development skills can be somewhat daunting. It may be something that you're not prepared to do or have had much education around. So hopefully today we'll touch on a piece of that, which is introducing yourself to potential employers. So we're going to talk about the importance of introducing your employment services in a business-like and professional way. We're also going to identify the elements of an elevator speech. So we're using the elevator speech as the introduction when you are introducing your employment services. And then also we're going to define the purpose of really having this systematic approach to building relationships with employers. And thank you for all who are using the chat to introduce yourselves. You feel free to do that, but we're going to get ahead and get into some of the content. So we'd like to start the learning community call, this Innovations in Career Services learning community, with some feedback and some information from you about any challenges or successes over the past month, over the past couple of months that you would like to share with the group. So have there been any successes that you would like this group to know? Then we talk a little bit about what you think contributed to that success, what might be some challenges with job development or providing career services that you may also be encountering or have encountered. And maybe we can have an opportunity to hear from others on the call about how to navigate some of those challenges. So please use the chat or unmute your mic. And if anyone has a challenge or success they'd like to bring up with the group, let's spend about, 5 or 6 minutes talking about this. And just adding one more piece, Darren and I use some of what you're all talking about as challenges in crafting and preparing future topics. So, there might be a challenge that you're encountering that maybe others have encountered as well that we can create some topics around. Anyone have something? It could be a success. You feel free to use the chat or unmute, or even a challenge that you'd like some support around. Oh, I see something here in the chat. So we have someone talking about a struggle recently is the lack of job opportunities in general. Is that something that others are also experiencing? Jessica, I see you shaking your head. So what's happening? Emily and others who are agreeing, what's going on? And how are you navigating that challenge, more importantly?
I've been getting a lot of the response that employers, business picks up during like tourism season. So right now it's a lot slower for most people. So they're not wanting to add any more staff.
So it's not, the time of year may not be conducive to hiring, so they are preferring not to add additional staff. Other ways that you're experiencing this, and it looks like Angelina, you're hearing that a lot too. You're writing in the chat. What are some ways that you're navigating some of this challenge at, not the job leads just aren't there, the opportunities are just not available. What are ways that people are sort of navigating through that? Let's see here in the chat. We have a couple of. Okay, so Jessica mentions I recently started and have experienced clients talking about being underemployed. So underemployment, in addition to not finding employment, job seekers and participants in your services are feeling underemployed.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
If I could add to that a bit,
Yes, yes.
um, it seems like, just in general, being in a very rural area, the opportunities are such that people sort of take the jobs that are available, and we help provide supplemental services for, connecting them to SNAP benefits or connecting them with the Olympic Connect network. Um, but I recently just started, so I'm just beginning to learn how to navigate all the complexities of the systems. But the feedback from clients that I've received so far have been primarily that it is difficult to make ends meet with a family and uh, get by with their current employment status.
Thank you, Jessica.
Mhm.
Very, very nicely worded. And we do have sessions occasionally on helping people in career advancement, helping people look at how to either move on in their current positions and move up in those organizations and businesses they might be in, how to request promotions, how to request a salary increase, and also identifying when it's time to move on and how to kind of look at the skills and the experiences and the values and all of the interest that the job that they're currently in is providing them to provide some career development and some opportunities to kind of examine what would be a next step. So that might be, it sounds like
Yeah.
a good next or kind of put that in the queue for
Okay.
one of our future trainings. Absolutely.
All right.
Are
Thank
others
you.
feeling similarly that career advancement and people kind of in that entry level employment, not moving beyond that, and really having difficulties making ends meet, like you said, and having that fulfillment and satisfaction.
Thank
It
you.
sounds like others. Yeah.
Thank you, by the way, for that.
Yes. Thank you for sharing. And it looks like we have quite a few other experiences here. Um, I've not worked with folks whose primary disability is mental health, but I have experience with advocating for accommodations and supports for clients from their potential employers. Absolutely. So, Mindy had mentioned suggesting volunteer work and additional skills to plump up the resume. That could be an option too. Additional skills training, additional courses, additional certifications. Yes, Veronica?
Excuse me. Yeah, lately I've been working with I've had clients that have serious mental health issues. So the good part about where I work, they also have we have a clinic, a medical clinic, and behavioral health, and a dental clinic, and vision. So I try to make referrals for them to get them to that point where they're meeting with the therapist and feeling okay to be able to, go out and look for a job.
So making those referrals to providers who could be assistive and supportive for people who are experiencing symptoms related to mental health condition. Thank you, Veronica. So this is very helpful. And looking here in the chat, I do want us to move on to the meat of today's content, but this is extremely helpful to read through, and I will make sure to copy this and run it by Darren Poschke, who is kind of the SE coordinator and helps with creating content for these and other webinars. So this is very helpful. I'm just kind of looking at this final barrier that someone mentioned here. A lot in my peer group is finding childcare for full-time job, especially if the job isn't a typical 8 to 5 schedule or if the children are under 5. So childcare is another barrier it sounds like people are encountering as well. But please use the chat to offer support to one another and feedback, or if you know of a service or a resource, please use this opportunity to provide that support and that collegial peer connection. That's one of the goals, a main goal of this learning community is really to promote this as an ongoing opportunity for you all to get some support from each other. So thank you for that. I have some ideas that I'll run by for upcoming seminars or webinars and sessions. So let's move into talking about job development. So when we think about job development, it really is about this idea of initiating and maintaining ongoing relationships with a variety of businesses and industry representatives, hiring managers, and assessing the business needs, identifying employment opportunities for job seekers, but really ideally trying to make that a good job match. So when we think about job development, what is it that comes to mind for you when you think about your own job development or, um, introducing ourselves to employers is one piece of the overall job development that we do. When you think and hear the words job development, what comes to mind? Anything in addition to this definition here? Let's see here in the chat. Someone mentioned, I think it's different with each HR person you meet. Yes, very personal. Another chat, establishing connections and relationships that are supportive for both the client and the business. Absolutely. Um, so the statement, someone's asking for an explanation. My question was, what comes to mind when you think about job development? And the statement here is really an explanation of what it means to job develop. It's not just going out there asking employers and businesses, do you have job openings? Because typically what happens, the business representative or the hiring manager says either yes, fill out an application online, or no, and then you walk away. Job development, the way that we're kind of framing it for this session today, and the individual placement and support model of supported employment really identifies job development as more than that. It's really about initiating and maintaining ongoing personal relationships with a variety of businesses in your community and hiring managers. And it's also about assessing what those employers' business needs are and identifying employment opportunities that match those business needs. So, just to kind of get a pulse of um, kind of where people are right now. So, what do you think? In a survey conducted by LinkedIn, what do you think the percentage of people getting jobs through networking is? And you can use the chat, unmute your mic, whatever works, but chat might be really helpful. All right, we got a lot coming in. 85, 35, 75, 75, 75, 85, 85. Yes, keep them coming. It's actually 85%. And this just further illustrates the importance of those initial introductions that we make to employers that help to develop this relationship. When we talk about job development, again, it's not about just are you hiring, yes or no. It really is developing these networks of businesses that you are interacting with in your communities, these partnerships that you're developing with companies and organizations that potentially have positions for job seekers that have goals that match what those jobs are. So we're really talking about that. Networking is so critical. Think about your own jobs and think about your own careers. And, if you were to think about all of the jobs that you've gotten in your life or your career, what percentage would you say those were through networking? And I would imagine it's pretty high up there, whether you might have known someone or somebody, in your network might know of an opportunity. So we're really just really want to hammer home that point that networking and building those relationships are far superior when we talk about job development than just knocking on doors. So this sort of lists each goal of the interactions that you have with employers. So as employment specialists, as vocational counselors, as career counselors, employment support specialists, whatever your job title in your organization is, presumably you're here today because you do some sort of job development. You do some sort of interacting with employers or the business community. And each interaction with an employer or business representative should have a purpose and an intent. And when you're preparing for each visit, it's really important to identify what that goal is so you can best prepare yourself. You'll see on the left here, the goal of the interaction, and on the right column, what you can do, sort of like a little cheat sheet, and how you might be able to prepare for that interaction. Today, we're going to focus on that top row here, introducing yourself in the employment services. But I did want you to kind of have a sense of what the different interactive or the goals of each interaction might look like. Yes, did someone have something they said to say? Oh, I'm seeing something here in the chat from Kim. When I was training horses professionally, it was all word of mouth. When I went into the public workforce, the first job was all, what's it say? All, can't see that. For the next two were because I had connections. Yes. So all networking and those connections are so important. So just to kind of briefly give an overview here, identify what the goal of your interaction with the employer is. Is it simply to introduce yourself and your employment service? Is it to gain a better understanding of the employer's needs? So maybe you've been invited back by the employer or the business representative to talk a little bit more about what their needs are. Someone earlier mentioned that there's a lot of seasonal work, and that's part of kind of gaining a better understanding of what the employer's needs are, getting a sense of when do they typically hire, what are their most immediate needs, and so on. So these are some questions here to kind of use as a little bit of a cheat sheet when you get to that second stage, if you will, when you're ready to really, move beyond just introducing yourself to the employer. Assessing work culture is another important piece. So work culture are really those areas of an employment setting that are almost like oh, can we make sure that we're muted? Oh, okay. Veronica, do you have your hand open? Your hand up? Did you have something that you wanted to say? Oh, I don't know what's happening. Hang on one second.
No,
Everyone
I
can
don't think I
see?
have my hand up. I'm sorry.
Okay, sorry, Veronica. Can you all see? Something weird is going on, but everyone is able to see the slides okay now? Just give me a little. Yes, thank you. Yay. Um, so looking at work culture, and the next slide has different work culture features, but kind of like, what is it about that work culture that employ if everyone could please just mute their mics, that would be great. Thank you. And then is it arranging the interview? Are you there to arrange an interview with I'm sorry, I'm gonna have to just ask everyone to please look and see if their mics are muted and to please mute. Thank you. Or are you following up with the employer? Have you already had an opportunity to arrange the interview and now you're following up? Either you've arranged the interview, no worries. For some reason, I'm not able to see everyone's little panel, so to mute. So yes, thank you. It looks like everyone's fully muted now. So we're gonna move on. So this just gives you sort of a quick overview of what the goal of each interaction could look like and how are some ways that you could prepare for that. But today we're going to talk mostly about the introduction piece, introducing yourself. But these are some different work culture areas that um, are important when you are assessing the work culture. And we won't get into too much detail about this. But looking at the leadership, looking at the management style, what are the policies and philosophies? How are the people interacting with one another? What are the mission and the values and the vision of the organization? And what's the work environment or communications like? How do people communicate? And these are all important pieces of the setting and the environment that you would want to convey back to job seekers so that they're familiar and can make an informed choice of whether or not that feels like a work environment that they would want to connect with. But today we are focusing on introducing yourself and your employment services. And what you would like to have prepared for that would be your elevator speech, which we'll develop in just a bit. And then also preparing for responding to tough questions. Think about what your purpose for visiting the employer is and having those, you know, potential responses and elevator speech prepared will certainly help when you're there to introduce yourself in employment services. So, what is an elevator speech? Has anyone used one or familiar with what an elevator speech is?
Coming from film school, it's your less than 3 minute pitch explaining basically the story and your hopes. In this scenario, it would be explaining what your people can bring to the role and what protections they might have if they hire people that need like accommodations or have barriers like criminal justice or things like that.
Absolutely. That's a piece of it. And it's also it's your first interaction, your first opportunity to meet with the employer and let them know who you are and what your services are. So I would even suggest that you wouldn't even be going beyond a brief introduction. I'll share with you a little formula that we can use to help kind of craft those elevator speeches. But yes, it's a very brief introduction of yourself. You might have a completely different type of elevator speech if you're using it for your own job search. This is really geared for your job developer's hat. So you as an employment specialist, a case manager, uh, coach, whatever your role is, but in your job development um, era. So let's look at let me just get to so here's an example or the ingredients of an elevator speech might look like you introducing yourself. What's your name? What organization? And then here's where I think you had mentioned as someone in film school that, might kind of veer a little bit. We know that the businesses that we work with might be having a hard time finding qualified workers. We know that there might be some challenges or concerns or problems that an employer might have. So we want to think about what that problem might be for an employer and how can you and the services that you're representing solve that problem? What are some ways that you can help the employer, help the business, help that hiring manager really solve or address the problem that you're, you know, presenting to them, and then offer a benefit to the business or the employer. So here's how it looks in let me just get to this. So here's an example of what it might look like. Hello, my name is Joni Dolce from IEI Employment Services. Finding reliable employees nowadays can be very time consuming and expensive. IEI Employment Services helps employers with finding qualified candidates and job applicants, which reduces the time, which might save you time and money in the recruitment process. You may even, describe further about how your services can help by saying something like, we take the time to speak with employers to identify your needs so that we can make a good job match with you and job candidates. And then ultimately, employers save the time and money in the recruitment process. So does this kind of line up with what your experiences are with an elevator speech? Or how might you come up with your own, which I'd love to spend some time today having you have the opportunity to come up with your own elevator speech. But first, does anyone have an example of their elevator speech that they are currently using to introduce yourself to an employer?
Like I kind of wanted to add to that. One thing that's helpful is also like kind of seeing what you can do for the employer too. Like for example, like working with veterans, there's a lot of tax incentives businesses can take advantage of. So try to share that. And then, it's not just about, me trying to help my clients, but seeing what we can do to help
Mhm.
them out too.
Yeah, so maybe that benefits to the employer piece, that fourth category, you might want to say something like employers can save time and money in the recruitment process, and there are also some potential tax credits that may be available to you, or some ways to, some tax incentives. Um, how might you weave that in, Miles, if you were to use this sort of framework, if you're creating your own elevator speech?
Oh yeah, I mean, usually I kind of explain like who I am, like I'm the employment coordinator for the Department of Veteran Affairs, Puget Sound. I explain a bit about my role. I assist veterans in navigating their employment goals. My hope is to not only help these veterans in navigating and finding out what they want to do and finding opportunities, but also to see what I can do to help you meet your business needs. There's a lot of incentives to hiring veterans, such as the work opportunity tax credit, and I can provide more information about that if you're interested or haven't heard of it. And then I kind of see if it'd be great to connect just to learn more about what you're looking for and what you need, so that I can better
Right.
inform my clients, right? Um,
Excellent, excellent. And
Something like
that,
that.
that describe a problem or concern, you might say something like, you may not be familiar with the different tax incentives or supports that might be available through services like mine. And then you could go in to kind of describe the service and move into it that way. But yes, what I love about that is never once did you say, like, are you hiring? We want to resist that urge to just go in and ask immediately, is the employer hiring? We want to use this introduction to initiate that relationship, develop that relationship, begin building that relationship with the employer. Just like Miles had mentioned, an opportunity to either come back and talk more or hear more about what they need or what their interests are and what the employers, um, how you can help them and kind of part of that is hearing what they need. So yes, absolutely. So I'm looking here. But customized resumes and cover letters to focus on the needs of business and the role of the position. Yes, absolutely. So would we have it so, or has anyone else, could we take a minute or two and see if you could kind of begin working on your own or at least get like the beginnings of an elevator speech, and then after today you can fine tune it or work on it, but the goal again is to use this in those initial introductions. So maybe we spend a minute or so and then, or, a few minutes and come back together. Um, I'll put the recording off and we'll spend maybe 3 minutes and we'll come back at 9:37 with, the beginning. So I really would encourage you to use this opportunity to sort of work on your own and get a beginning introduction. We'll resume in about a minute or so, but please take the time to come up with at least the beginning of your own pitch. Okay, anyone want to volunteer to set
Uh, uh,
tell us their pitch, their speech? Yes, Veronica, thank you.
yeah. Usually when I go to see an employer, I'll have a smile on my face, and I know that their time is limited, because sometimes I can see they have a lot of customers or something, and I try to make it, like you say, the elevator speech, and I go and, hey, hi, my name is Veronica Castaneda, we always carry a badge, and I always show 'em my badge. Yeah, I'm from Yakima Neighborhood Health Services, and I'm a job specialist, and in at our organization, we do have a department with job specialists, and we work with an array of clients that all have different skill levels and are looking for employment. Do you currently have any positions available at this time? Because I have a few resumes here handy. I'd like to show you, or maybe we can schedule another time to meet.
Great, excellent. Yes. So a lot of times when we ask if you have anything available, that could possibly close the door. I might suggest saying something like, I'd love to talk with you further about what your needs are, what I might be able to support you with. I'm working with a couple of job seekers now who seem to be a good match for your organization. I don't know if you're, currently looking for anyone, but I'm really here to introduce myself and introduce and get a sense of you, how we might partner together. Sometimes we ask if they're hiring too soon, we might kind of prevent that opportunity for more or continued relationship building. Do you know what I mean? But that was excellent. You've sounded so sincere and you really did a great job. Thank you for volunteering. And then Anthony is writing, my name is Anthony with the First Step Family Resource Center. I hear you're looking for several part-time workers. If you're willing to work with new families, navigating childcare is a barrier to employment. We have a small community of folks who might be interested in working out something with you. So Anthony, I love that, right there, you're explaining who you are. The one, you may want to rephrase or reconsider, you're starting in your intro about talking about barriers, right? That folks that you're working with might have. Maybe you want to, introduce yourself, and kind of identify how you might be able to address or help the employer with barriers that they might have. So, for example, you might maybe say something like, "Hi, my name is Anthony with First Step Family Resource Center. I'm under the impression that you're looking for part-time workers. I'm currently working with job seekers. I have a couple of candidates who have if they have skills or experiences to match, you want to convey that match what you're looking for. I saw the job postings online. How can we continue to have this discussion about how I might be able to help you address these openings, or how can I help you fill these openings? you know, you want, but yes, I think you had mentioned, Anthony, kind of being in a unique position. You're not necessarily a job developer, but you are an opportunity. But thank you. That's great. But yes, kind of, you know, you want to look to follow this to some extent, this kind of formula or these ingredients. Let's see what others have to say. Hello, my name is Kim Miller. I'm an employment specialist with Tazera in Bremerton. I'm making connections in the community with businesses to assess their hiring needs and discuss potential solutions through using Tazera's services. We strive to make good job match for employers with job candidates and to provide support to develop a sustainable, stable relationship between our clients and their employers. I was wondering if you have some time to sit down and discuss your needs with me. Beautiful, excellent. You know, this very brief intro conveys to the employer that you want to help them. You want to, you know, one of your goals, you strive to make a good match. Yes, excellent. And you could use those as, you know, use the ones that Anthony and Veronica and Kim just put in, you know, if with some of those modifications as sort of examples for you when you're developing your own. But anyone else like to give it a shot and either write out in the chat or unmute your mic and let's hear your elevator speech or the beginnings of it. We didn't really have that much time. Just wait another few seconds. Okay. So when we're developing our elevator speech, our introduction, any kind of materials that we might have, whether business cards or brochures or our website, whatever it might be, we want to make sure that the language that we're using is really consistent with business type language. So, you know, we might say terms like competitive employment. You know, we help people find competitive employment. Well, to a business, that doesn't really, they don't know what competitive employment is. That's kind of jargon that we use. You just say work or job or consumer and client. We want to be careful not to, you know, rely heavily on those more human service or rehabilitation language. We want to just say applicant or job candidate, or you know, instead of saying we provide counseling or, you know, we can, you know, counsel the job seeker. Maybe we say something more business appropriate that's meet with or negotiate or even job development itself. You know, what we're really saying is marketing and so on and ongoing supports. That's kind of jargon in our fields, but to a business, they're really looking at maybe more business related language might be long-term employee assistance. So just to kind of talk about that a little bit. And I think, Veronica, you really nailed it when you said you go in with a smile. Like that's so important, right? That developing that professional persona, going in with a smile. Anthony's speech, elevator speech, you could feel that professionalism. You could feel that positive attitude. Kim's as well. But you want to, you know, you want to be professional. You want to dress the part if, you know, whether it's dressing a little more formally than maybe the business where you're going into, or making sure that you have, you know, a pad of paper if you're going in person or something else to take notes. Whatever that is, you want that professionalism. You want your professionalism to also be conveyed in any materials that you have. So if you have business cards, you know, you want those to be consistent with a business. Let's see here. A clipboard, yes, Emily, um, always makes you seem important. That's so funny, but you're right. Like having a clipboard, having like a notebook or something with you, And then Cass mentions here, I try to customize mine for the employer, especially if I'm able to point out the inactive problem. So the elevator speech, yes, Cass, customizing it to each employer. I'm going to just read what you have here. One I did recently was one of a really busy Walmarts in the area. Hi, my name is Cass. I couldn't help but notice while walking around there seems to be a large amount of items that have been misplaced throughout the store. I work with various individuals and identifying the best job for them and their skills. I know one of them would love to spend time just going around and putting things back where they belong. Is this something that you would be open to discussing this opportunity further? Yes, I think that's a wonderful example of really tailoring it to each specific job seeker and also each specific environment. But yes, presenting that with confidence, having that positive attitude, um, using the language that we just talked about, more business language, and respecting the employer's time, realizing that and saying right up front, I don't know if now is a good time, but would love to have a chance to come back and talk a little bit further about how we might partner together, how we might collaborate. We're both, in the business of connecting people to jobs and would love to have an opportunity to talk further about how I can assist you in that end. So let's see. Um, there also might be questions about when you're kind of getting that additional information, when you're back maybe for the second visit, or maybe Veronica, when you go and the person you meet with says, yes, Veronica, I have some time now. Maybe you want to have prepared different questions that you want to know or want them to really understand that you want to get a sense of what their needs are. So maybe questions about the business, so specific questions about, what the job, what the company's about, um, questions about the right candidate. What do they look for? What are some job candidates or employees that would be successful in that environment, questions about the positions, full-time, part-time, seasonal, whatever those might be, questions about the hiring process, what are some next steps. So after that introduction and you get into that opportunity to really talk a little bit more about what you do and what you can do for them, these are the types of questions that you might want to be prepared to ask. Veronica, yes.
Um, I forgot what I was going to say. No, oh no, for the most part, I have had positive feedback from employers. Usually they'll, I've had more than 50% of the time if you want to talk to the manager, I can get him for you, or
Okay.
I can get her for you. And some of the times they'll think I'm the one looking for a job, but then I have to clarify, no, I'm not. But then that's where I go into my speech and let them
Mhm.
know. But that's that's a good opportunity because here in our area, it's really a agricultural based
Mhm.
uh, area, and then I also have, a couple of Spanish speakers on my caseload and that, are authorized to work, in the US, and that, can be challenging to, look for something available to people that speak only Spanish. They understand it, but don't speak it as well.
So some of those challenges, which also could be maybe advantages. Maybe you have connections with employers who need Spanish speaking employees. And those are the types of questions that you might want to be prepared when you're meeting with employers. In addition to questions about the business, what are the goals of the business? What's the vision for the company? What sets the company apart? Um, Questions about the candidate. What type of person would be successful? What qualities do you look for when interviewing job candidates? What are some of your hiring headaches? So again, kind of thinking of ways that you might help solve that. Questions about the positions. Um, what other positions might you have available? What's a typical day like? What are some of the challenges that people in that position might have? And then the hiring process. What's your hiring process? So people should start with an online application, but you mentioned that you need people who are self-starters with outgoing personalities, or, if you had a friend who matched that description, how would you advise them to go about applying for work here? So kind of just asking some questions. Kim mentioned here in the chat, I always encourage clients to have at least 3 questions to ask each employer during the interview as well. So yes, in addition to your job development, also coaching the job seeker to have some questions. It's good for the company, um, for the companies to know that who and what they are matters to the community. Yes, absolutely. So let's just move on. You'll have these, I put these in the chat. So we did a very, quick dive into introducing yourselves to employers. We created elevator speeches. We also talked about how to kind of, you know, present yourself and your services to move into maybe that next stage of getting to know the employer a little bit more. Um, but I wanted to spend a little time for any questions that people might have or any further information. I'm going to put my name here in the chat or my emails to please reach out if you have any further questions or would like to review your elevator speeches with me. You can send me an email, and we can, I can give some feedback if you'd like. So please reach out. So the bottom line is job development takes time, takes certain skills to develop those relationships with employers. And that initiating and developing relationships is really one of the key elements and critical features of IPS, the evidence-based individual placement and support model of supported employment. Kim mentions practice, practice, practice. Yes, finish those speeches that we started to develop today. Have an opportunity to practice with your colleagues or friends or family or whoever that might be. Even job seekers, if you're meeting with a job seeker, maybe, they would like to hear how you're presenting the service and how you're kind of representing the service. So using those opportunities to practice and having kind of fun with it. Like Veronica said, going in with a smile, having that professional persona, and um, yeah, so here are some references, and we thank you so much. And if you have time to complete the survey, it's greatly appreciated to give us some information about what future topics you would like to see presented, and then also what, um, any feedback regarding the session and what you'd like to see. So I appreciate everyone's time and enjoy the remainder of your day. Hopefully you're staying warm out there. I know here on the East Coast in New Jersey, it's getting pretty chilly. So take care, everyone. It was great seeing you, and thank you so much for all of the engagement and interaction. Hope to see you all next month. Bye.